Hello students, I hope all of you are safe at home. Okay, today we are going to start with the first chapter of your class 12 syllabus, that is variation in psychological attributes. In class 11 we have discussed about these attributes many times. We have discussed about intelligence, we have discussed about attitude, aptitude and so many more things. And all of you know what are physical attributes. When we are talking about height, body weight, eyeball color, hair color, type of your hair, type of your skin, these are all your physical attributes. And we are all different in terms of physical attributes. We are all different in terms of psychological attributes also. What are the psychological attributes that we are going to read about in this chapter? The most important one is intelligence. And you might have seen that this particular chapter is devoted to intelligence and very little bit of other attributes have been discussed. Why? Now, the reason is that intelligence is something which is used for all the other tasks that you do. Intelligence is defined as a global capacity. Why? Because it is found in each and every one of us and it is needed for each and every task that you do. Whether you are planning your next day, how you plan, if you are intelligent, you will plan in a very smart manner. And if you have to do a very difficult task, an intelligent person will take less time compared to a person who's not that intelligent. That is where the difference lies. Now in your book you'll see that the beginning of the chapter is devoted to individual differences. And the definition says that individual difference refers to distinctiveness and variations among people's characteristics and behavior patterns. What are the distinctive differences? We discussed just now that the distinctive differences are the physiological, physical and the psychological attributes. Each one of us, we are different. We are different in many ways, but we are all human beings. Now, you have heard about functionalism, structuralism, behaviorism. You have heard about the humanistic school. Now there's something very new which is known as situationism. And you'll see that each and every chapter you'll find that there is a bit of mention about situationism. Now what does the situationism wants us to interpret our attributes? It says the situationism perspective views human behavior relatively more as a result of influence of external factors. But situationism will need few more years for people to conduct researches and then come up with certain theories which maybe after 20 years we will be able to read about those. Now when we talk about attributes and we say that psychology is a science, see, all these attributes need to be measured. They need to be verified. If these attributes are not verified, then they cannot be considered to be under the purview of science. And we claim that psychology is science. So, we have to measure these attributes. And these attributes can be measured. They can be measured in terms of quantitative and qualitative data or analysis. Now see, we are talking about intelligence, and intelligence is expressed in terms of IQ. You know, the average IQ of a normal population is 90 to 110. A person who belongs to this particular range of IQ is labeled as a normal IQ or a person with a normal IQ. He falls under the normal category. Now people who are below 90 are below normal. Then there are many more labels given to it depending upon the IQ, level of IQ. People who are above 110 are superior, above 120 are gifted, above 130 are prodigies. So what happens when we are trying to quantify a particular attribute? It is not complete when it is just a score. This score needs a description or a qualitative interpretation. So the 90 to 110 being labeled as average is the qualitative interpretation of the score. If you are not aware of this range and what does this range fall under, then the score is of no use. So like this, there are many attributes which cannot be quantified. There are qualitative analysis of those scores. There are different tests which can be used to measure these attributes. Okay. Now see, here you will see in page number 3 the assessment of psychological attributes. Here you will see that they have given us certain steps. Assessment is the first step in understanding a psychological attribute, and we have just discussed about the assessment. There are different types of assessments. Next assessment refers to the measurement of psychological attributes of individuals and their evaluation. Unless and until you evaluate those scores, and how do we evaluate these scores of the different types of psychological tests? There are certain norms provided by each test. It has to be a standardized test. If it is a standardized test, then you will find that there are certain norms attached to those tests, and you have to use those norms to interpret your scores. Otherwise, you will not get a proper description of the score that you find out. Often using multiple methods in terms of certain standards of comparison. Now, if you are trying to assess personality, say for example, you are trying to assess personality, you will have to administer at least 2 to 3 tests to that same individual to come to a conclusion. And all these 3 tests will be of different kinds. When you try to interpret the scores or interpret the findings, you will get certain things which will be common to the findings of all these 3 tests. Say A, B, C, 3 different types of tests you have administered. So these 3 tests will have certain common features which will come up, and you can make your analysis using those common features and make a report of your personality assessment. That is how all the psychological attributes are assessed. We don't just stop after administering 1 test. There has to be 2 or more tests. Thank you. We'll discuss the next portion in the next video. Okay, we were talking about assessing different psychological attributes. So now we come to the domains of psychological attributes. What are the different domains that you are going to read in this chapter? The first important domain is intelligence. Here, intelligence has been given a great weightage compared to all the other attributes. The second that you are going to read is aptitude. Then interest, personality and values. The second chapter is devoted to personality. We are here going to focus more on intelligence. And then on aptitude, interest and values. Okay. So intelligence here is something which is a global capacity. See, the definition says intelligence is the global capacity to understand the world, think rationally and use available resources effectively when faced with challenges. Another definition which you will find in your book is that intelligence is to understand well, reason well and judge well. If you are an intelligent person, you will be able to do all these three things very efficiently. I think all of you have conducted the experiment which is course block design test. You were a part of the class 12 practical and you were administered by your partners. What happened in that test? That is a test which gives you your IQ, and in that you need to be very fast because it is a speed and power test. You need to be fast, you need to make less movements because there are deduction for less movements and there are deduction for exceeding the time limit. So if an intelligent person is given that particular test, he will try to do each and every design in very less time and very less movements, and his scores will go up. Once you get that score, you get the mental age of that person, and then you know the formula. MA by CA into 100 is the IQ score. Once you get the mental age of a particular person, you can find out the IQ very easily. So a person has to be very fast in thinking, and a person has to judge very fast to place those blocks in the right place with the right color. That was course block. Now let's come back to intelligence. Now what is intelligence? We say that intelligent people don't make mistakes again and again. Why? Because they learn from their past experiences. They are smart enough to know as to when to do what, which is the right time and right place to act. And I believe all of you are intelligent. So let's see what are the different theories we have to read in this chapter. And who was the first person who thought about intelligence? You know, initially when people who lacked intelligence behaved in a very weird manner, their behavior was somewhat different. Now, different in what sense? That difference was common in many people. So, there was a person named Sir Francis Galton. He thought that there is something missing in these people. Some X factor is missing. Now, what is this X factor? And how to find this X factor? So, he came across Alfred Binet. He's a very famous person, and even now Binet's test is used, and it is one of the most standardized tests. Binet in the year 1905 got in touch with Sir Francis Galton, and Galton had requested him to design a test which can find out this X factor, which they later labeled it as intelligence. And Binet started with 30 different tests. I should not say tests, those were 30 different items which he started to design, and he designed a test which was administered to many people, especially the army people, and then they found out that X quotient, and that is how people thought of measuring intelligence. And since then Binet's test has been revised many times. He started it in 1905, then there was a revision in 1907, then 1911, 15, like that there has been many revisions, and in between he came across Simon, another person. That is why his test is known as Binet-Simon test. So Alfred Binet's test, because he said that there is X factor, so one factor means unifactor, and his theory is known as the unifactor theory of intelligence, because he thinks intelligence is just one thing. If it is there, it's there. If it is not there, then a person lacks intelligence. Binet thought of revising his test again and again, because as years pass by, there are many more new advancements around us. So he had to revise his test, and that is why this test has gone through many revisions. Now, after intelligence, we come to aptitude. What is aptitude? Aptitude is an inborn potential of an individual. We can say it's God-gifted, it is inherited, it is genetic. So, if you are a good singer, you are blessed with the aptitude of singing. You are a good artist, you have an aptitude for artwork. You are creative also. Creativity is another different aspect which we'll come to it at the end of this particular chapter. But now here, let's think about aptitude. Now, aptitude is something which needs training. If you possess a particular aptitude and you get the right kind of training for that particular skill, then you are going to master it. See, all of us, we start any kind of task, something new which is being taught to us, we start it with a lot of interest initially. Interest generally is there unless and until you are forced to do something. So you start with interest, and then you see that you can do the work very fast compared to other 5 people around you. So you will be able to master it faster compared to people who are working with you. Why? Because you possess that talent. And with little training, you flourish. At the same time, people who are working with you, or the people who are going through that training, will also be able to do it. It is not that they won't be able to do it. They will be able to do it, but they might take more time. Little more time compared to what you need. And you will be able to do it with very less effort or focus or concentration. But your friends might need more effort, more dedication. Here the difference lies. You possess the aptitude for that task or the skill. They don't possess aptitude. They just possess interest, or they have started the work with interest. So, interest will help them complete the task and do it, master it, get a certificate for that. But you will do it very fast, and you will also enjoy that. Okay. We end it here. Then We are going to talk about interest in the next class. Okay, let's talk about interest now. See, interest is an individual's preference for engaging in one or more specific activities relative to others. Now, when you are starting a particular kind of a training, initially you need to have some kind of intrinsic motivation. You know about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. We have discussed about it in chapter 4 in class 11. Now, intrinsic motivation is an urge, inner urge, which pushes you to do certain acts. And you do it with a lot of enthusiasm. Why? Because you are interested in it. And this interest is your preference. You like doing it. Once you start a particular kind of work with interest, it becomes easy. So, studies also you need to put a lot of interest. Then it's going to be easy for you. What's the next thing? The next is personality. Personality refers to relatively enduring characteristic of a person that makes her or him distinct from others. Each and every one of us have got certain traits. These are called personality traits. These traits are to some extent inherited traits and some we acquire it. That is nature and nurture, environment and heredity. Both together makes a person's personality. And we will discuss about personality in the next chapter because it's a huge chapter and it's a very interesting chapter because there are lots of theories, lots of other things which you are going to read. The last one here are values. What are values? They are the enduring beliefs about an ideal mode of behavior. What are ideal mode of behavior and who sets these ideals? Who sets these ideals? Do we set it? The society sets it? Your parents sets it? Basically, these values are all acquired. We say that they are indirectly inherited. When you are small, your mode of learning is through classical conditioning, operant conditioning, observational learning, modeling, trial and error learning. Through all these different modes of learning, you have also learned the values. These values have been there throughout and we do respect them. We start living with them and they make us different or unique. They are the belief system in us. Okay. What are the assessment methods? How do we assess these attributes? The first one is the psychological test. There are different types of tests. There are standardized tests and you know the process of standardization. We have discussed about standardization in chapter 2 in class 11. There are different steps involved in it. You know what is objectivity, you know what is reliability, validity, all these things you know, and how does a particular test go through different stages to become a standardized test. It's a long process. But you can also make your own test, but then it has to go through the standardized process of standardization, then only it will be useful and can be used by others also. Generally, we choose the standardized test because it makes us work easily. And there are different paper pencil tests, there are performance tests, there are non-verbal tests, there are verbal tests which you are going to read about. slowly. I think I have introduced the non-verbal test in class 11 itself when you have done the interest test, that is CNPR, Chatterjee's non-language preference record card. You all have done it. And paper pencil test, or maybe when we talk about verbal test, you have done the personality test, you have done the adjustment test with class 12s. So you know what a verbal test, what a non-verbal test. Course block design test is a performance test. It has got certain blocks which you have to make a design with those blocks. So those are the different types of psychological tests, and they have their norms, they have their scoring methods, they have different tables which you have to refer to get the proper result. Next is an interview. How many types of interviews are there? That also you have read in chapter 2 in class 11. Structured interview, unstructured interview, or standardized or non-standardized interview, one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-one. All these different types you have read. Structured are the ones where the questions are already pre-decided and you carry on with the interview according to your questionnaire. Unstructured ones are as it flows. There are no specified questions which you had already pre-planned, but according to the flow of the conversation, it goes on and on. So those are the non-structured or unstructured interviews. Next, case study method. Case study method, I think I have discussed about case study methods a lot many times, because you had to go to Antaragram and then you had to do a case study on a particular client over there. And you were with class 12s to see how a case study is done. Basically, a case study is an in-depth study where we use many methods and we select a particular, say a person, a particular maybe issue, and then you work on it. And you use many methods, many techniques to come to a conclusion. That is why it is one of the best method. The second last one here is observation. Observation also we have discussed. Participant observation, non-participant observation, controlled observation, naturalistic observation. What is participant observation? Where the person who's observing is a part of that particular group. He is participating at the same time. He is noting the data also. In this case, the atmosphere is not disturbed because these people who are being observed is not aware that there is a person who's the observer. But in a non-participant, a person comes and maybe sits or observes a particular group. That can disturb their natural behavior. That is why, to minimize this disturbance or minimize this error, the participant observation is a better one. Okay, what is a controlled observation? Where we can manipulate the variables. And naturalistic observation is we go to that particular place where a particular phenomena is happening, and then you are an observer over there. You go and observe the behavior of people. You note down, or maybe you record those behaviors. Okay, this was observation method. Last one is a self-report measure. Self-report measures are the ones which are again the paper pencil tests, and you have the opportunity to go through the questionnaire and mark the answers which are already given. These are all close-ended ones because you are not free to express your feelings in those answers. There are certain options and you have to choose those options. This was the different types of assessment methods that we use in psychological attributes. Okay. Thank you.